So hopefully I have nothing in my teeth. So let me just start by saying this is a 90-minute workshop. We're going to do it in about an hour. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail. However, I'm going to show you the basic framework, and this is a framework that you can take and apply at home with your friends, whatever you would like. Now, the title of this is Learn the 12 Agile Best Self Principles so that you can go beyond burnout and on to awesome. This is all about how we show up as coaches and how we can show up as grounded, centered individuals because we're change agents. So my name is Michaele Gardner. I'm the co-founder of this framework. It's based on the 12 Agile principles, which many of you probably already know. I don't know if you have them memorized, but that's okay. The handouts in front of you list the 12 Agile principles in the first column, and then the Agile Best Self principle, which is loosely based on the intent of the Agile principle, and then you can take notes. Active learners like to take notes. And then we'll get into the hands-on workshop piece after I give you about 10 minutes of brief introduction and modeling of the behavior. I'm a lead Agile coach at Target Corporation. I'm not here officially representing Target, but Target was gracious enough to say that I could put this on the website. I'm also adjunct faculty at St. Thomas University, so that means that my students call me professor even though I do not have a degree. And I don't have a PhD, sorry, I have multiple degrees. But the point is that what I teach in the master's program at St. Thomas is I teach engineers how to understand the concept of business value and how they figure out how to build the right thing and what problems they would like to solve. I also do a lot of other things on the side, but we don't need to go into that now. And here we go. Let's see why this is not working. So the good news when you're a speaker is there's always something that's going to go wrong. If something goes wrong at the very beginning, then you figure that you get out of jail free pass going forward. So why don't we just do this? Oh yeah, my computer doesn't like me today. It doesn't like me on most days, so it's nothing new. So since I'm supposed to stand in this box anyway, what I will do is just manually move things forward. One thing that Stacy Louie wanted to remind us of is that as speakers, we're not here selling anything. I'm not selling anything at all. I'm giving an Agile Best Self framework back to our Agile community. Because based on the number of people in the room, I'm feeling some of you feel like it's a little rough out there. And as coaches, we could use a little help. Or even as product owners, or even as Agilists, or even as working parents, right? So it's a free framework for awesome Agilists. It's not a sales pitch. I'm not here to sell anything or to convince you of anything. I'm here to share my passion project. Thank you. Now we have two things that have gone wrong. So wow, we're on a roll. So a little bit about myself. My personal philosophy is that I'm a connector and a catalyst. Anything that allows me to connect people and be a catalyst, or allows me to connect people to people, or people to ideas, or ideas to ideas, that's what I love to do. That is in my DNA. Now, my co-presenter was not able to be here today, but his personal philosophy is to be a light. So he's a light that attracts people and attracts goodness and helps people find their way through the darkness. How many of you have a personal philosophy and you could just spout it out like that? Raise your hand. Good. Okay, some of us are there, some of us aren't. Totally fine. I'm assuming that may be one of the reasons that you're here is to help figure out what your personal philosophy is. So we'll talk about that a little bit because the whole Agile Best Self is based on do things that help energize your best self. However, you're going to have to figure out what that means. For some people that are introverts, their best self means taking a break over lunch and going for a walk and not being part of the group that's getting together for lunch. So anyway, a little bit about my background. I started out as a crisis counselor and decided not to get my degree in psychology because people were too messy. People would call into the crisis line and I'd say, oh, well, you go do this, here's a list of resources. And they wouldn't do what I told them to do. Imagine that. So I transferred all my degrees, credits, and became a COBOL developer instead. They're very related. A COBOL program, when you write it, you give the instructions to the computer, if you do your job right, it does exactly what you tell it to do, all right? Little command and control tendencies there? Possibly. So then I moved on to, I moved out of the country, moved to the Netherlands, and worked as a Java developer on an XP team. And that's where I was like, wow, I really like this way of working better than being a COBOL developer in a waterfall world. And long story short, I moved back to the States, and now I'm a coach. So next thing I want to do is I want to give you a gift, because we're in the holiday season. And another thing with these sessions, everything is opt-in. If you choose to not take part in an exercise, I'm totally fine with that. But we do run these sessions with curiosity and respect. So right now, we're just going to take 5 deep breaths. Those of you that would like to close your eyes and anchor yourself in the moment, that's awesome. Those of you that prefer to just take deep breaths with your eyes open, go ahead and join us too. So 5 deep breaths. I'll give you a warning when I'm done with my 4th breath. Oh, and this is also a really good time. If this session isn't for you, use your 2 feet, and I won't feel bad if you leave. If this is not the right time for you for this, totally fine. So close your eyes or not. 5 deep breaths. I'm starting my 5th breath now. How do you feel now? Here's a word cloud to help you out. How are you feeling? Grounded, fresh, centered. Those 5 deep breaths really helped me. So now, how many times a day do most of you check in to where your emotional state is? Well, you just did it today. And a lot of people, after we do these workshops, they come up to me and they say, that's the only time I've meditated this week. Because what you just did is called meditation. It's not about focusing on exactly what you need to do or focusing on your breath. It's about bringing yourself back to the breath when you're meditating. So you're expected to make mistakes and have to bring yourself back to your breath. That's just part of the whole process. So we're going to watch a video, and this is the next step where things typically go horribly wrong in this workshop, but we'll see what happens. And pay attention to the emotions that this young girl in this video, what she's going through. The self-talk she's telling herself at the beginning, and then the self-talk at the end. I hope that the volume will be loud enough, but we'll see.
I'll be fine. I'll do it. Here goes something, I guess. You can do this. I'm gonna jump. Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Keep it straight, you'll be fine.
Okay. Straight. Do you go faster on the end run?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Just longer. Just longer. It's just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep.
It's a bigger 20. I got it. Okay. Here. I go. Just the suspense at the top of the first time freaks me out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now. Whoa!
I love this video because it helps outline the difference between self-care and best self. Self-care was all the practice, all the time she put in, working with a ski coach, whatever they're called, a ski instructor, and you could tell that she'd done the hard work. As a parent, I was glad to hear that they didn't just put her up at the top of the hill and just push her off, but she was like, oh, this is 20 longer than the 60. And I'm like, okay, good, she's practiced this at least once. But the self-care were all the habits, all of the practice, all the intentional things that got her to the top of that ski jump. And the best self was what she felt like at the bottom. She was invincible at the bottom. Did anybody else notice anything else about her change in tone and behavior in the video? Anybody want to share? Yes? Yes. Whimpering to rebel yell. Wouldn't that be amazing if we could do that? Maybe not in a 2-minute increment, but just in our lives. Waking up in the morning going, all right, I'm going to take on the day. That's what best self is all about. So I'm going to explain this in a different way on this next slide. When I met Brian Hackerson, the Agile Best Self co-founder, he was in the pit of despair. He had just been through a really difficult transformation at a global company that I think is a Fortune 50 company. I'm not sure exactly where they rank, but he was really focusing on self-care concepts, meditation, doing the right thing, and shutting up that trickster in his head. The trickster in the head of the little girl was basically telling her, you can't do this, you're not good enough, you're probably going to fall, don't snowplow, I know you're going to snowplow. Those are the types of things that the trickster says. The trickster was meant to keep us alive, but there aren't any tigers in this room. Hopefully there aren't any tigers at your workplace. We don't have to be on trigger alert for things coming out of the bushes at us, even though we're hardwired to think that way and act that way. So when I met Brian, I, being someone who's been in the Agile world since the year 2000 when I was an XP developer, I bring Agile principles into everything I do. I bring it into being an ice hockey mom, I bring it into the small business I run, and of course I bring it to the class I teach, and I also bring it to my workplace. So when you mash those together, we came up with the Agile Best Self. Because as Agilistas, we want to focus on the outcomes that we're after. Not did you get your 30 minutes of meditation in today, or not did you drink your 8 glasses of water, but why are we doing this? So when you start applying the Agile Best Self principles, my partner Brian and I figured out that we started having amazing things happen to us that we couldn't have foreseen because we showed up and interacted with the world differently. Because we were centered and we were balanced and we were rested and we didn't let that trickster take over our brain. So self-care means putting on the oxygen mask first. Many of us flew to be here. We all went through that little talk where you put the oxygen mask on first. Let's be a little more aspirational. Let's focus on how we can become our best selves once we get beyond self-care. If you're really in the middle of burnout, you probably need professional help. I am not a professional in that sense of the word. I am not a licensed therapist. This is more to help people to get to the next heights. Best self is really about learning how to fly the plane. What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do that's amazing and fun? The first Agile principle is about satisfying the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. You figure out what's valuable to the customer by inspecting and adapting. The Agile principles are around creating high-performing teams. Agile Best Self is about creating high-performing individuals. So just like this being the Agile cornerstone principle, and I've heard from people that wrote the Agile manifesto that the reason they worded this as our highest priority is because it truly was their highest priority to deliver value. So this is one of the Agile cornerstone principles. The Agile Best Self principle, cornerstone principle, is our highest priority is to be our best selves, to enable others to be their best selves. Not to drag them by the hand or push them off the edge of the pool, but to enable them, to help them, right? This is based on you and you alone. And throughout the course of the day, there's one thing in your life that you have maybe a 50% chance of controlling, and that's how you show up and how you interact with the world. It's in some ways more difficult and more challenging than helping a team because you have to take ultimate responsibility for you and your actions. So we're going to go on to the next step because I want to get to the workshop soon. Here are the Agile Best Self principles. You have copies in front of you. All right, so we're going to dig into this when we get into the workshop. And I'm going to move things ahead relatively quickly. This is how I get my students to pay attention. I say, this is going to be on the test. Everyone goes, what? Huh? They stop looking at their devices. This is going to be on the workshop. I'm going to ask you guys to get together in groups, and I actually need the volunteer up here for a second. I forgot to put something on the tables. This is mistake number 3, so I'm going to go off camera for a second and run away out the door. My wonderful volunteer here is going to put 1 or 2 table tents on each table, because guess what? This is a workshop that involves movement, and she's going in order. So she's starting with the first Agile principle is at this table, Agile Best Self principle. The second Agile Best Self table tent is at this table. So pay attention to where she lands up. So that's the third Agile Best Self principle. In a couple of minutes, you're going to be getting up and moving to the table of the principle that either calls to you or the one that you don't understand, so that you can engage in another conversation around it. So to help you with the workshop, I'm going to model some of the behavior that you would see in the workshop. So you don't have to go it alone. So watch me. I'm going to show you how to do one, a couple of examples, and then you're going to be able to participate. So the first Agile principle, our highest priority is to be our best self and enable others to be their best self. In order to really do this, you have to think about what is your best self. My best self, as I mentioned, my personal philosophy is when I'm a connector and a catalyst. I had someone ask me at a speaker's dinner last night, why did you come and present at this conference? And I said, because I'm a connector and a catalyst. And his response was, well, how do you know you're a connector and a catalyst? And I said, because I did the work to figure it out. Anything that allows me to be a connector and a catalyst is my best self. If I have more than a 10-minute conversation with you, I'm pretty sure you're going to walk away with a book to read, because I'm going to connect you with a book. I'm going to connect you with people that are talking about some of the issues that you're dealing with. Maybe it's Cy Wakeman, maybe it's Brene Brown. I don't know. It depends on the conversation. So that's how I live and breathe this example. So if I were writing out Post-it notes, I would say my best self, connector and catalyst, speaking at conferences, talking to people, going to meetups. Those are all examples of how I would be my best self. And the outcome that I'm looking for is, this is my passion, this is where I get my energy, right? There's another principle here, and this is counterintuitive. Principle number 8 is we should prioritize being more over doing more for sustainability. For me, ironically, being more is sleeping more. I have a sleep disorder. I normally get 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night before I started a meditation routine. So for me, shutting everything down and going to bed was me living and breathing this principle, because I am a grouch when I get 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. I'm not a good mom, I'm not a good partner, I'm not a good coach when I show up tired and exhausted. So the outcome that I'm looking for here is the ability to be grounded, the ability to be focused, and the ability to actually have some passion. The other part of my personal philosophy is that I'm a catalyst. I will give you a spark, I will give you an idea, but you need to carry it forward from there. I'm not going to be the one that helps you figure out your whole best self journey. You're going to have to do that on your own, and you're going to have to do that within your own like-hearted community. So, and I also just love this picture of the sleeping monkey. It relaxes me to see this funny picture. Next example, in the Agile principles, technical excellence and good design is one of the principles. In the Agile best self, we refer people back to scientific research. Don't buy into the fads. Don't buy into the things that say, I can't think of a fad right now, but when Brian and I do research on this, we go and look at the neuroscience. We go and look at the studies that have been done. There are so many studies that have been done on the benefits of meditation that we don't even really have to cite those. But when something new comes out, we go and we do research on it, and we won't recommend anything or put anything on our agilebestself.com website unless we've done some research on it, especially in the field of neuroscience. My 13-year-old son has dyslexia. His brain does not work in the way that most children's brains work. So I do a lot of research on dyslexia and the best way for dyslexics to learn, because the game of school is not allowing him to be his best self at school. He is not a sit in the corner kind of kid and solve math problems. He just knows the answer to most of the math problems, and he can't write out why he derived X this way. That's just not the way his brain works. And the more you understand about the neurology behind dyslexia, you realize that they just think differently than the rest of us do. And no matter how many classes I send him to, it's not going to make him that perfect A student. And honestly, I don't care if he's that perfect A student. I want him to get a love of learning. So one of the outcomes I look for is if I have continuous attention to scientific research, I know that the best self practices that I follow or I recommend for others, that they're actually going to get some of the outcomes that they'd like. So this is where we're going to do the hands-on workshop. Now, you saw the room volunteer hand out the principles, put the table tents up. This is where you get to stand up, pick one principle, and go to that table tent. And hold on for just a second. I'm going to tell you, this is what we're actually going to be doing. I'm going to honor the introverts by having 3 minutes of silent writing, one idea per Post-it note. And remember, write down why you want to engage this principle or the outcome that you're looking for. And then we're going to have 5 minutes of debrief based on curiosity and respect. So go ahead and determine where you want to be. We're going to get up and we're going to move. Or you can stay where you are. So this is 1 up front, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we are going to start the timer for 3 minutes. All right, why don't we start the share out? We have 5 minutes slated. So who would like to share? There was a comment around like-hearted communities earlier. Where's the like-hearted table? So can you read the principle?
The principle is the best inspirations and insights emerge from like-hearted communities.
So like-hearted, what does like-hearted mean to you? So essentially, to rephrase what you said, like-hearted communities align to the same North Star. They just have different ways to get there, right? So, well, I have to make a reference to Jürgen's keynote speak since Jürgen is in the house, right? Yes, great session. Fill it out. 5 stars from a Dutch guy. That's pretty difficult. So Jürgen knows that I'm married to a Dutch guy, so I'm allowed to poke fun at the Dutch. So the other piece of that is we started with the word like-minded. And then this is where it's really helpful for the co-founders to be standing here so that each other. We have different ideas about things. I'm not even sure if we have the same political viewpoints, and honestly, it doesn't matter. We both have a passion around Agile. We both have a passion around helping people discover their personal philosophies. We both have a passion around helping people become their best selves. The other things are details that don't matter. So we were very intentional about saying like-hearted communities. I love being in a room with people that have different viewpoints than I do, people that have a different way of looking at the world than I do. I'm a verbal thinker. I'm not an introvert. I'll just say stuff. Introverts are usually a little more careful about what they're willing to throw out into the room, right? That's not me. But I like to warn people when I'm working with them that I'm not an introvert, so I'll just throw out some half-baked ideas and we can make it better as a group. That's how this whole community started. Does anyone else care to weigh in around the best inspirations and insights emerge from like-hearted communities? And the outcome that we're looking for, again, is what? Our best selves. We're looking for innovation. We're looking for inspiration. We're looking for a reason to get out of bed in the morning to be like, wow, I get to go do something cool today. 2 years ago, before I started this best self work, I didn't get out of bed every morning saying, wow, I get to go to something cool today. Some days I did, some days I didn't. I could usually find at least one meeting on my calendar or one thing I was supposed to do during the course of the day where I would say, wow, this energizes me and this is why I want to get out of bed, right? So The outcome that we're looking for is inspiration. We're looking for creativity. We're looking for ways that we can become our best selves that maybe we haven't thought of. All right, so we're only 3.5 minutes into the time box. What would somebody else like to talk about? Another principle you want to dig into? Any insights you'd like to share?
We're engaged Circle Daily, which is the principle that we were working on here. And the very first thing that came to mind when I sat down at this table was, why would I want to engage them every day? And it's because my circle pushes me to be better.
Your circle pushes you to be better?
Yeah.
My circle helps me down. I have circle spans the globe. So at any time of any day, I can probably find someone who's awake, right? And I love it that you brought to the table that they'll push you. Simon Sinek's book around the infinite game, he talks about his rival, Adam Grant. He and Adam push each other to be better, and they intentionally have a friendship based on that. And sometimes we have rough days at work. Sometimes we just want to be able to be around a trusted circle. Part of my trusted circle are actually some of the authors that I read. Well, actually, no, that's more my like-hearted community. My trusted circle are people that I trust the feedback that they give me, whether it's good, bad, or possibly something I don't want to hear, right? Because they're part of my trusted circle. For more insight into how to define who your trusted circle is, Brené Brown is a wonderful researcher to look into. All right, do we want to go into any other principles, or do you guys want to go and do another round? Jürgen. Yes, please. Can you guys hear Jürgen?
I noticed that yesterday I arrived without a suitcase, and I wanted to run, so I went to the local Agilista store, and I ran.
Yep.
And I would never have the case for myself after 2 years because I hate sports from the bottom of my heart.
You hate sports.
Why would I go to Agilista just so that I can run? Oh, because I came to fight for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important that I exercise every day. And the motivation is to keep up with this. This was day 24, and I'm not going to
Not losing me.
destroyed
Yep.
just because I don't have my suitcase. So I'll just buy replacements and I run. And that motivates me. And then I'm proud of myself after, like, I did it again. I
Mm-hmm.
have to raise the score for it, but I did it. And that's sort of a big hobby moment. So that's how I
And so I love the way that you focused on the self-care pieces of it, running to not break your streak. But the outcome that you got is you're proud of yourself. You overcame some obstacles. You made it happen, right? I lost my meditation streak on a flight to France because the flight didn't have Wi-Fi. I still meditated, but I lost it on the app. I was upset. However, every time I would look at my meditation app, I knew exactly when I was on a flight to Paris. I was like, oh, I was on a flight to Paris. Yeah, okay. That's worth losing your meditation streak. All right, another comment in the back? You were? Yes. Continuous attention to scientific research enhances best self. That is a great comment. There are a lot of... Oh, I'm supposed to repeat the question. How do you go about vetting the sources? So the meditation app that I follow, 10% Happier, they actually interview neuroscientists that talk about what your brain looks like when you're in an MRI meditating. I also look at, I'm a geek, I go and read some of the medical studies that they do, or I look at the psychology studies that they've done, that people that meditate show a statistically significant decrease in blood pressure after they've done X, Y, or Z. So with the advent of functional MRIs that can see what's actually going on in your brain, there's an awesome TED Talk by Angela Dweck, if you guys are familiar with the concept of growth mindset. They measure the brain waves of people that have a fixed mindset about something and there's no neurological activity. When they measure the brain waves of people that have a growth mindset that are curious, they actually see brainwaves. So a lot of it, you can go to our agilebestself.com. There are a lot of TED Talks listed. And this is also where, depending on what you want to learn about, what scientific excellence means. Jürgen mentioned running, that you didn't like running, but you do it because there are changes that happen in your endorphins in your body when you're done. Those are things that are scientifically shown, right? I don't work out to lose weight. I work out because if I don't work out, I'm grumpy, and I don't like being grumpy. So let's do something about it. In fact, I hate being on my treadmill. I will grit my teeth for 19 minutes, and at minute 20, the magic happens. I'm like, oh, finally, this is worth it. But I know the cycle. So some of the scientific evidence comes from yourself, and some of the scientific evidence comes from the science community. All right, I think we probably have time to do one more round of switching to other tables, or we can also talk about the daily self-care habits. All right. I love that approach. He mentioned the building daily self-care habits, and the analogy that used is we pay attention to our outside. We brush our teeth, we shower, we try to show up in a way that we're presenting our best external selves. Well, but what about taking care of our inside selves? What about taking care of our soul? What about taking care of our mind? What about taking care of our attitude? Those are different internal things that we need to focus on. And how do we up the game there? Was that an accurate summary of what you said? And what were some of the things that you wrote on the Post-it note? What are some of the outcomes that you're looking for? And habits and routines to create to up the game in your best self are critical, like the running or the gamification of your meditation so that you don't lose it. I religiously put in 5 minutes of meditation every morning, and it didn't work. It didn't do anything. The outcome wasn't what I needed. I have found that because of switching costs, if I'm going to meditate, I need to meditate for at least 20 minutes. Same thing with working out. 20 minutes seems to be the magic number for me. I don't know what the magic number is for you. However, pay attention, be mindful and intentional. So that is number 6. The most effective way to be your better self is to be mindful and intentional. Don't just follow a written program. Figure out what works for you. Some days, working out is my highest priority. Some days, sleeping in is my highest priority. And because I have a flexible framework I can follow, I know when I need to sleep in. The framework gives me the ability to make that choice and to say no to working out and know what the consequences are. Yes? That reminds me of a phrase where people say you can expend as much energy drowning as you can swimming to shore. I would be willing to bet that the burnout rate in the valley is very high, and that people not taking vacations or not taking time to take care of themselves sees a relatively high toll. So ultimately it comes down to, what do you need to do for yourself to take care of yourself? If this isn't the right culture, you're maybe going to have to make some tough decisions. Sheryl Sandberg, when her children were younger, her admin actually set up meetings in other buildings at the end of the day, so people just thought that she was in another building when she was actually leaving to get home. So maybe in her case, she had to actually do some subterfuge. So a lot of it is it the right fit for the right environment? So I can't answer the question for you, but I think it's definitely something to think about. And can you be your best self if you're working 80 hours a week? I typically put in 60 to 70 hours a week because of the multiple jobs that I have. One of the things that I didn't list on the slide is that I own rental property. So if a toilet breaks at somebody else's house, I'm responsible for 36 toilets, right? I have to drop everything and go and take care of that, or find someone to take care of it. So I do put in a lot of hours, and my goal is to scale back a little bit, but you have to be intentional about it. So I think it all comes back to being intentional. But these are some challenging issues when you're up against a culture of workaholism. All right, so we are getting close to wrapping things up. Normally we do several rounds of this so we can experiment with different principles and talk about them and dig into them a little bit. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do that in the time box that we have, but thank you for your support here. So the other thing that we didn't really cover is we do have Agile best self values. And just like the Agile Manifesto, the values are being our authentic selves over figuring out how to fit in, iteratively creating our next best self. We don't always know the answer. Jürgen talked about startup ideas and innovation ideas. We don't know until we interact with our ecosystem to see if it will even work. We have to constantly be experimenting and iterating. And the other thing is getting and sharing energy from like-hearted people. We valued that over relying solely on a self-motivation plan that you download from the internet. And then mindfully adapting, we value over prescriptive self-improvement. There are tons of programs you can buy on the market. This isn't a program. We're not trying to make money. We're just trying to give some of this information back to you. Now, if you want to, let me go back here. Right. You can join our Agile Best Self group on LinkedIn. In order to do that, you can either send us an invite or you can connect with me or Brian and then we'll add you. Just in your connection, just please say that you'd like to be part of the community. This is a community that we created so that I could wake up in the morning and see inspiring stories, not stories about politics or religion. And it's a monitored community, and basically the rules are behave, no BS, because this is a place where people should go to be energized. And then we also have a website called Agile Best Self, where we have a lot of stories around how we have used some of these principles to be our best self. The last blog story that I wrote, luckily I had all my clothing with me at the last conference I spoke at, but the hairdryer attacked me in the morning. So I got to be curious instead of just being really, really ticked off that everything was going wrong in the morning. And then it became funny. And then I wrote a blog about it. So feel free to go to either place or both. And also connect with other people that are here in the room to focus on ideas that they have for their best self. I don't have all the answers, but this is the first step in building a like-hearted community who has the same goals and the same North Star. So I think the next step is to do the evaluations. All right. And also, if there's chocolate on your table, please take it. Take it, eat it, share it, make a friend. All right, thank you.